This is way worse than we thought, as fans of the Toronto Raptors are well aware, even during the organization's best years, how the NBA can continuously disrespect and neglect this Toronto Raptors team. However, after bringing in a star caliber player, after all of these main core pieces were injured for the past season and a half for this group, and all of the young talent that this Toronto Raptors team has been able to amalgamate and take their games to the next level entering this season, the NBA continues to stand on business in its Toronto Raptors disrespect and how it's viewing this Toronto Raptors group. And frankly, it is way worse than we thought. We knew it was going to be bad. The Raptors have objectively been one of the worst teams out there over the past season and a half. So I get why some people are undervaluing the Toronto Raptors and stuff. It is way worse than any of us thought. So what's going on? What's happening? The Toronto Raptors, by Bleacher Report right now, have been ranked the 25th best team out there in the NBA. Need I remind you, there are 30 teams in the NBA. A team that has this lineup, I'm going to break down the analysis, who they have ahead of us, and their reasoning why. But a team that's starting Scottie Barnes, who's one of the top players out there, rising young players out there in the NBA. A former All-Star, a guy that has finally been put in a situation to maximize his potential, in Brandon Ingram. A really dynamic duo out there on the wings. Then you have Immanuel Quickley, finally healthy, finally getting back in the mix. Who's an elite sharpshooter that complements this team perfectly. You have RJ Barrett, who averaged 21, 6, and 5 out there in your starting unit. And then Jakob Poeltl, the perfect glue center for this group. To be a guy that can finish in the lane, can do a lot of stuff out there on the court. Then paired along with all of that, you have a bench that is extremely deep. The deepest team we've had in years, with Jamal Shead, with Gradey Dick, Ujiri, CMB, Immanuel Quickley, Jacoby Walter, Jamison Battle, Jonathan Moba. That is at least 8 guys out there off the bench for sure. And I'd add AJ Lawson to that. That's 9 guys out there off the bench that are legit NBA players and impactful NBA players. You have all those guys out there on your bench, and they expect this team to be worse. They expect them to be a bottom 5 team out there in the NBA. Sickening. I'll give their reasons for it and how they're thinking about it. Essentially, the Toronto Raptors are plus, 15,000, I don't know, 150,000 to win the championship, all that stuff. I can't even read the numbers without the commas. But they're saying the Raptors are entering this campaign with a decent amount of talent, but the puzzle pieces are far from a seamless fit. Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, even Brandon Ingram all play as secondary creators rather than primary offensive engines. I'm not even giving that credence, right? And the possible exception of Quickley, none of them command a ton of respect as 3-point shooters. When those 4 are on the court with Jakob Poeltl, which figures to be fairly common in lineups, defenses might be able to pack the paint and do whatever that happens out there on the outside. The potential monotony could be broken up if they have young players like Gradey Dick, Ujiri, Jonathan Moba, CMB, if they pop, but even that probably won't put them much higher than the play-in. This is just an absolutely surface level stupid argument in terms of how they are viewing this Toronto Raptors team. If they're looking at the roster like that, you don't think a lineup out there with these types of players, this level of talent out there in the mix, Scottie Barnes, who is one of the most plug and play, put him with anyone, and he's going to be able to be impactful. Brandon Ingram, a guy that averaged 22, 5, and 5 last season, that can pass, dribble, shoot from anywhere on the basketball court. RJ Barrett, the dude averaged 21, 6, and 5. Those guys aren't going to be able to create offense. They're going to be, you pack the paint and everything's going to be sorted. Jakob Poeltl has been playing on a team without shooters for years now at this point. For years, not just with the Raptors, but with the San Antonio Spurs. He is one of the most elite players at navigating the dunker spot, getting into these areas, and being able to be effective. He had the best season of his career in a team that barely had any shooting last season. That's stupid. It's stupid. It's a stupid argument. It's stupid that they expect this offense to be cooked here now at this point. So then again, as said, off the bench, if you are having spacing issues, we have some elite shooting out there off the bench. Gradey Dick, Ujiri, Jamison Battle, Jacoby Walter, 4 guys that can knock down. AJ Lawson can knock down the 3-point shot at elite rates. Immanuel Quickley can play the 4 or the 5. Slide him in there at any position. He's going to be able to space the floor. The Raptors have options, even if in the worst case scenario, this team is struggling out there on the offensive end. They're going to be able to sort all that out. That's Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense out there. Like, and the argument here, right? The argument here in terms of saying Scottie Barnes, Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, even Brandon Ingram play more like secondary creators than primary offensive engines. Scottie Barnes was a point guard in college. Brandon Ingram, if you want him to, he is the primary option out there, whatever offense you want, and he's going to be able to get you buckets. RJ Barrett, I don't know if people have watched him play, but he could score in the paint. He could score from behind the three-point line. His passing was very much elevated last season. All those guys can be primary offensive edges. Literally, the argument I'd make for this being the case is we have too many guys that can have the ball. Like, we're going to need to see if RJ Barrett and Brandon Ingram can have a lot more possessions and be just as effective with the ball in their hands less, which they've all talked about out of your preseason and, entering this year about how they're excited to get a lot more clean and open looks. So, that's the arguments there. This doesn't make any sense. But then we look at the teams that are ahead of them. We take a look at the teams that are ahead of these guys. The Chicago Bulls. The Portland Trail Blazers. The New Orleans Pelicans. Teams like, you take a look at the Bulls, right? We take a look at the Bulls. What is this roster? Like, yes, they have like Josh Giddey re-signed. Buzelis is exciting. But, this team sucks, man. This team sucks on the offense and defensive end, especially on the defensive end. The Bulls are going to be cooked. They have the Kings out of the Toronto Raptors, and I like the Kings. I love DeMar DeRozan. I love the Sacramento Kings out there in the West. But the fact that the Kings, who, quote-unquote, from DeMar DeRozan last season, were a dumpster fire. That's a quote from DeMar himself. Yes, they brought in Dennis Schroeder, an underrated point guard, all that stuff. They were a dumpster fire. They brought in Zach LaVine too. Didn't make a ton of sense. Whatever, right? I don't buy that. I don't buy that team being better than the Toronto Raptors. Then you have the Bucks. Now, this might be my hottest take, I think, entering this season. Just talking to my friends, talking about people that watch basketball, all that type of stuff. I think the Bucks are going to be bad next season. People do not understand how good Damian Lillard was for that team last year. Yes, defensively there are question marks, but he did play 58 games. He played 58 games and averaged 25 points in those games. 4.7 boards, and then also 7.1 assists. Damian Lillard had a really good season last year, was impactful for the Milwaukee Bucks. It was in Milwaukee. He had some injuries in the course of the year, but played 58 of those games and was very impactful. They are replacing now him, and they also lost Brook Lopez too, who's an older version of himself, of Miles Turner. I don't think Miles Turner is that much of an upgrade over a Brook Lopez. In terms of his inconsistencies and stuff like that, Brook Lopez was steady, was stable, could knock down the three-point shot, and most importantly, had years of chemistry with Giannis Antetokounmpo, all that stuff. We'll see how Miles Turner is, because that guy's career is an absolute roller coaster. Even the playoffs, we saw it. The Milwaukee Bucks are not good. Without Damian Lillard too, I don't know how they're going to generate a ton of offense. Giannis, of course, is one of the top 5 players in the NBA. Do not get me wrong, and Giannis is great all in his own right, but they are not deep. They're running KPJ at the starting point. I don't know if people have seen, Kevin Porter Jr. run a team, but it is not a great sight to see. Fantasy basketball people should be excited about Kevin Porter Jr., but this team is an absolute disaster. Shout out to my guy, the star boy, Gary Trent Jr. on this squad and all that, but this team is going to be bad. And this might be my hottest take. I could be completely wrong. I've seen some people say, hey, are the Bucks a dark horse to come out of the Eastern Conference? I think they are going to be very, very bad entering next year. And they are listed over the Toronto Raptors. And, I'm a biased Toronto Raptors fan. I honestly try to rate it a little bit for the podcast, which some people might think is crazy. But I view the Toronto Raptors as hey, the play-ins underselling. It's underachieving in terms of how I view it, assuming there's no crazy injuries and stuff. Again, I expect injuries, that's how the season goes, but assuming there's nothing absolutely absurd to our best top guys, I think this team should be shooting for a top 6 seed. And I honestly think they can do it. So it's silly. It's crazy what's going on here. The Raptors being disrespected this early on. Let me know what you guys think about all this as we enter the season. Do you agree? Am I overrating the Toronto Raptors? Where do you expect this team to land over the course of the season? You guys best take as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.